hit the subscribe button. Currently only 1.7% of my viewers are subscribe. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll release an exclusive special video just for you.
The sky over New Sydney split open with a crack of thunder, and the Asleel's bioorganic ship descended, casting a shadow over the city. Dr. Mitch Callahan stood at the forefront of the crowd, anxiety gnawing at his insides. He had prepared for this moment meticulously, but now that it was here, the weight of its importance pressed heavily upon him. The Asleel, revered throughout the galaxy for their unparalleled medical expertise, had finally agreed to a historic meeting. Yet, their terms were strict. They would not intervene medically until convinced of humanity's worth. Mitch was chosen to represent humanity's plight, a task he took with a heavy heart. His sister, Lucy, lay dying from a rare, incurable disease, and he believed the Asleel could save her. As the ship landed, a ramp extended with a soft hum, revealing the Asleel delegation led by the stern and analytical Physician General Saul. Tall and graceful, Saul's deep blue skin shimmered under the artificial lights of the city. His eyes, devoid of any warmth, scanned the crowd before settling on Mitch. Dr. Callahan, Saul's voice was as cold as his gaze. "We are here to observe." Mitch stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Thank you for coming. We hope to show you our progress, our resilience, and our potential for growth." Saul nodded, but his expression remained unchanged. "Proceed." Mitch led the delegation through the heart of New Sydney, a city rebuilt after numerous natural disasters. The streets bustled with activity, showcasing human ingenuity and perseverance. "This city," Mitch began, "is a testament to our ability to rebuild and improve. We've faced many challenges, but we've always risen above them." Saul remained unimpressed. "Your species has a history of conflict and environmental degradation. Why should we help a species that repeatedly harms itself?" Mitch's jaw tightened. "We are not defined by our past mistakes but by our capacity to learn and grow from them." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I'd like to show you our medical facilities." At the New Sydney Medical Center, Mitch introduced the Asleel to his colleagues and patients. The facility was state-of-the-art, equipped with the latest technology and staffed by dedicated professionals. "We've made significant advancements in medicine," Mitch explained, "but there are limits to what we can achieve alone." In one of the wards, Mitch's sister, Lucy, lay in a sterile room, her breathing shallow and labored. Her eyes lit up when she saw Mitch, and he squeezed her hand gently. "Lucy, these are the Asleel. They might be able to help us." Lucy managed a weak smile. "It's nice to meet you," she whispered. Saul observed her condition with clinical detachment. "What is her ailment?" "A rare genetic disorder," Mitch replied, his voice tinged with desperation. "We've tried everything, but nothing works. I believe your advanced technology could save her." Saul turned away from Lucy, addressing Mitch with a critical eye. "Your advancements are commendable, but they are driven by necessity rather than true understanding. You patch wounds without addressing the root cause of your suffering." Frustration flared within Mitch. "We may not be as advanced as you, but we have something invaluable, our resilience. Each scar we bear is a testament to our survival, our refusal to give up." Saul remained silent, his expression unreadable. "We will continue to observe." As they left the hospital, Mitch felt a growing sense of urgency. He needed to make Saul see the value of humanity, not just for the sake of his sister but for the future of their species. The delegation moved through the city, witnessing the everyday struggles and triumphs of its inhabitants. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, a low rumble that quickly escalated into a violent shake. Mitch's eyes widened as he saw plumes of smoke rising in the distance. "The volcano, it's waking up." Panic spread through the streets as people ran for safety. Mitch turned to Saul, his voice resolute. "This is our chance to prove our worth. We need to evacuate the city." Saul hesitated, then nodded. "Very well." Show us what your people can do. Mitch sprang into action, rallying his team and coordinating the evacuation efforts. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of unity and determination among the people. They worked together, guiding each other to safety, their resilience shining through the crisis. As the volcanic threat loomed larger, Mitch found himself at the center of the effort, his leadership and courage undeniable. He pushed through his fear, driven by the need to protect those he loved and to show Saul the true spirit of humanity. The volcano is waking up, Mitch whispered as he watched the plumes of smoke rising in the distance. The ground trembled beneath his feet, a sign of the impending eruption. Panic spread rapidly through New Sydney. The city, once a beacon of human resilience, now faced another catastrophe. Mitch took a deep breath, rallying his thoughts. We need to move fast. Every second counts. Beside him, Saul and the Asliel delegation observed with detached interest. Mitch turned to them, urgency in his voice. We could use your help. Lives are at stake. Saul's expression remained stoic. We are here to observe, Dr. Callahan. This is your test. Mitch clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling up. Fine, he snapped. We'll do it ourselves. He turned to his team, issuing rapid-fire commands. Anna, get the evacuation routes clear. James, coordinate with the emergency services. We need to prioritize hospitals and care centers. As his team sprang into action, Mitch ran towards the city's central hub, where the evacuation plans were stored. The city's infrastructure groaned under the strain, buildings shuddering as tremors rippled through the ground. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of determined urgency among the people. They moved with purpose, guided by the knowledge that every life mattered. Mitch's mind raced as he coordinated efforts, his thoughts flickering to his sister, Lucy. She was in the hospital, vulnerable and dependent on him. He pushed the worry aside, focusing on the immediate task. The streets of New Sydney were a cacophony of noise, sirens blaring, people shouting, the ground rumbling beneath it all. Mitch's team worked tirelessly, their efforts a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. They set up makeshift triage centers, guided people to safety, and maintained order amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, Saul watched with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Your people are efficient in crisis, he remarked to Mitch during a brief lull. We have to be, Mitch replied, sweat trickling down his forehead. We've learned to adapt and survive. Saul's gaze was inscrutable. Survival often demands more than efficiency. It requires understanding and foresight. Before Mitch could respond, a particularly violent tremor shook the ground, sending cracked spiderwebbing across the pavement. He stumbled but quickly regained his footing. Anna, status report, he barked into his communicator. Anna's voice crackled through. We've evacuated most of the lower sectors, but the upper levels are still critical. We need more time. Mitch glanced at Saul. We can't do this alone. If you have any compassion, help us. For a moment, Saul remained silent, then he signaled his team. Assist them, he ordered. Use our technology to stabilize the structures. Relief flooded through Mitch. Thank you, he said, sincerely. As the Asliel joined the efforts, deploying advanced stabilization devices and medical units, the evacuation gained new momentum. Their technology was unlike anything the humans had seen, organic and adaptive, it seemed to meld with the environment, reinforcing buildings and creating protective barriers. Mitch continued to coordinate the evacuation, his respect for the Asliel growing as he witnessed their capabilities. Yet, the volcanic threat loomed ever larger, the ground spewing ash and lava in violent bursts. Time was running out. In the hospital, Lucy lay in a sterile room, her condition deteriorating. The tremors had made her breathing more labored, and her face was pale. Mitch found a moment to check on her, his heart aching at the sight. Hang in there, Lucy, he whispered, squeezing her hand. We're getting you out of here. Lucy managed a faint smile. "I know you will," she replied weakly. Back on the streets, the combined efforts of the humans and Asliel were making headway. Buildings were secured, people guided to safety, and the injured received immediate care. Yet, despite the progress, the volcano showed no signs of relenting. A massive eruption seemed imminent. Mitch knew they needed a decisive action. He turned to Saul, desperation in his eyes. "We need to divert the lava flow. Can your technology do that?" Saul considered for a moment, then nodded. "It's possible. We'll need to create a barrier, a channel to redirect the lava." "Let's do it," Mitch said, determination hardening his voice. The Asliel deployed a series of bioorganic devices, which rapidly grew into a network of channels and barriers. It was a race against time as the ground beneath them quaked violently. Mitch and his team assisted, their hope reignited by the possibility of success. As the final device was set, a massive tremor rocked the city, and the volcano erupted with a deafening roar. Lava surged forward, but the channels held firm, redirecting the deadly flow away from the city. People watched in awe as the Asliel technology contained the threat, their advanced engineering a lifesaver. Mitch let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "We did it," he murmured, relief washing over him. Saul nodded, his expression finally softening. "Your resilience is commendable, Dr. Callahan. Perhaps there is more to your species than we perceived." Mitch met Saul's gaze, hope flickering in his eyes. "We have much to learn from each other," he said. As the immediate threat subsided, the people of New Sydney began to regroup. The collaboration between humans and Asliel had averted disaster, but the experience had left an indelible mark on both sides. Mitch knew that the real test was just beginning. The road to mutual understanding and cooperation would be long, but for the first time, it felt attainable. Mitch's thoughts returned to his sister. With the city stabilized, he rushed back to the hospital. He found Lucy asleep, her breathing steadier, a sign of hope amidst the chaos. Mitch sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "We'll get through this," he whispered. "Together." The dawn brought with it a new sense of purpose and unity. The people of New Sydney and the Asliel had faced a monumental challenge and emerged stronger. Mitch looked out at the horizon, the first light of day illuminating the city. The journey ahead was uncertain, but he felt ready to face it, knowing they were not alone. The acrid smell of smoke lingered in the air, mixing with the sharp tang of molten rock. Mitch's voice cracked as he spoke, "We can't save everyone. But we can try." The aftermath of the volcanic eruption had left New Sydney in a precarious state. Although the immediate danger had been diverted, the city was still on edge. Streets were filled with displaced citizens seeking shelter, and emergency services were stretched thin. The partnership between humans and Asliel had averted disaster, but now came the arduous task of rebuilding. Mitch stood at the command center, poring over maps and coordinating rescue efforts. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more urgent than the last. He glanced at the clock, every second counted. He couldn't shake the image of Lucy, her frail body fighting to hold on. He needed to find a solution, and fast. Saul approached, his presence imposing yet calm. "Dr. Callahan," he began, "the immediate threat has passed, but your city is in disarray. What is your plan?" Mitch looked up, his eyes filled with determination. "We need to stabilize the infrastructure, ensure everyone is accounted for, and provide medical care to the injured. Your technology can help us expedite this process." Saul nodded thoughtfully. "Our resources are at your disposal. However, there is something more pressing I need to discuss with you." Mitch's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Saul's gaze was intense. "Your sister's condition. We have analyzed her medical data, and I believe we can help her. But it requires a procedure that has never been performed on a human before." Hope and fear clashed within Mitch. "What kind of procedure?" It involves genetic restructuring, Saul explained. We can potentially correct the anomalies causing her illness. However, there are risks. Mitch took a deep breath, the weight of the decision pressing on him. What kind of risks? The procedure is complex and experimental. There is a chance it could fail, or worse, cause unforeseen complications, Saul said, his tone grave. Mitch looked away, the enormity of the situation sinking in. He knew he had to consult Lucy. She deserved to make the choice herself. Back at the hospital, Mitch sat beside Lucy's bed, his heart heavy with the news. She looked at him, her eyes filled with trust. "What's wrong, Mitch?" He took her hand, his voice gentle. "The Asleal think they can help you. They have a procedure that could cure you, but it's risky. I wanted to talk to you about it." Lucy's gaze didn't waver. "What are the risks?" Mitch explained everything Saul had told him, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Lucy listened intently, her face serene. When he finished, she smiled faintly. "I trust you, Mitch. If you think it's worth the risk, then I'm willing to try." Emotion welled up inside him, but he held it back. "We'll do it together," he promised. The next day, the preparations for Lucy's procedure began. Mitch worked tirelessly alongside the Asleal, ensuring every detail was meticulously planned. Saul oversaw the operation, his expertise a source of reassurance. The hospital buzzed with a mix of anxiety and hope. As the procedure commenced, Mitch stood by, watching the Asleal technology in action. Organic machinery enveloped Lucy, its movements precise and fluid. The air was thick with tension, every second dragging on. Mitch's heart pounded, each beat echoing his fears and hopes. Hours passed, and finally, Saul emerged from the operating room. His expression was unreadable, but Mitch's stomach twisted in anticipation. "How is she?" Saul's gaze softened slightly. "The procedure went as planned. Now, we wait." Mitch nodded, relief mingling with lingering anxiety. "Thank you, Saul. I can't express how much this means." Saul inclined his head. "Your people have shown great resilience and courage. It is we who have much to learn from you." Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Lucy began to recover. Her strength returned bit by bit, each day bringing new signs of improvement. Mitch stayed by her side, his heart lifting with every small victory. The bond between them grew stronger, fortified by the trials they had faced. As New Sydney started to rebuild, the cooperation between humans and Asleal deepened. The once distant alien observers became active participants in the city's recovery, their technology and knowledge proving invaluable. Walls of mistrust began to crumble, replaced by mutual respect and understanding. One evening, Mitch and Saul stood overlooking the city from a high vantage point. The skyline, marred by recent events, was beginning to heal, just like its people. "We've come a long way," Mitch said, his voice thoughtful. "Indeed," Saul replied. "Your people have shown us the strength of unity and resilience. It is a lesson we will not forget." Mitch turned to Saul, a smile playing on his lips. "We still have a long way to go, but together, we can achieve great things." Saul nodded. "The future holds many challenges, but also great potential. I look forward to what we can accomplish together." As they stood side by side, watching the sun set over New Sydney, Mitch felt a renewed sense of hope. The journey had been fraught with peril, but it had also forged bonds that transcended species and cultures. The road ahead was uncertain, but with allies like Saul and the Asleal, Mitch was ready to face whatever came next. And so, amidst the aftermath of disaster and the promise of new beginnings, the alliance between humanity and the Asleal stood strong, a testament to the power of resilience and cooperation. The ground beneath New Sydney shuddered one last time as the final tremors of the volcanic eruption subsided. Mitch stood at the hospital window, gazing out at the city as the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds of ash. His mind was a whirl of exhaustion and hope, but the sight of the sun piercing the gloom brought a small measure of peace. A sudden knock at the door drew Mitch's attention. Saul entered, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Callahan, we need to talk." Mitch turned to face him, his heart skipping a beat. "How is Lucy?" Saul's face softened slightly. "She is stable and recovering well. Her genetic restructuring is progressing as expected. But we have encountered another issue." Relief washed over Mitch, tempered by the new concern. "What's the problem?" "The seismic activity has destabilized the fault lines beneath the city. There's a significant risk of another, even more catastrophic eruption if we don't act quickly," Saul explained, his voice steady. Mitch felt a chill run down his spine. "What can we do?" "The Asliel have technology that can reinforce the tectonic plates, but it requires precise placement and activation deep underground. It's dangerous and time-sensitive," Saul said. Determination replaced Mitch's fear. "Tell me what we need to do." The plan was quickly put into action. Mitch, Saul, and a team of Asliel engineers prepared to descend into the volcanic tunnels beneath New Sydney. The atmosphere was tense as they gathered their equipment, each aware of the perilous task ahead. Lucy, now able to sit up in bed, grasped Mitch's hand before he left. "Be careful, Mitch. I believe in you." Mitch squeezed her hand, a fierce protectiveness in his eyes. "I'll be back, Lucy. Stay strong." The journey into the tunnels was treacherous. The air was thick with heat and sulfur, and the walls of the tunnels pulsed with the latent energy of the earth. The Asliel equipment hummed with power, casting an eerie glow in the dim light. Saul led the way, his movements precise and confident. "We need to place these stabilizers at key points along the fault line. It will reinforce the plates and prevent further eruptions," he explained, his voice echoing in the cavern. Mitch nodded, his focus unwavering. "Let's do this." As they worked, the ground trembled intermittently, a reminder of the looming threat. Mitch's hands moved with practiced efficiency, his mind blocking out everything but the task at hand. Sweat dripped down his face, mingling with the dust and grime of the tunnels. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the ground, knocking Mitch off balance. He caught himself against the tunnel wall, heart pounding. "We're running out of time," he shouted over the rumble. Saul's eyes flashed with determination. "We need to activate the stabilizers now. Follow me." They reached the final point, and Saul began the activation sequence. The devices glowed brightly, their energy resonating through the ground. Mitch watched anxiously, every second stretching into an eternity. The tremors grew more intense, the tunnel threatening to collapse around them. Mitch and Saul exchanged a glance, a shared resolve in their eyes. "We need to get out of here," Mitch urged. The team scrambled back through the tunnels, the ground shaking violently beneath their feet. Mitch's lungs burned with exertion, but he pushed on, driven by the thought of Lucy and the people of New Sydney depending on them. As they neared the surface, a massive quake rocked the ground, causing a section of the tunnel to cave in. Mitch was thrown to the ground, pain shooting through his leg. Saul turned back, his face set in grim determination. "You go ahead," Mitch gritted out. "I'll catch up." Saul hesitated, then nodded. "Stay close." With a final burst of energy, Mitch pushed himself up and limped after Saul. They emerged into the open air just as the stabilizers reached full activation. A deep rumble echoed through the earth, then gradually subsided into silence. Mitch collapsed on the ground, breathing heavily. Saul stood beside him, his expression one of relief and respect. "You did well, Dr. Callahan." Mitch managed a weary smile. "We did it together." Back at the hospital, Mitch reunited with Lucy, his heart swelling with relief and pride. She was sitting up, her color improved and her eyes bright. "You're back," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Mitch hugged her tightly. "I told you I'd be back. And we did it." The city is safe. As New Sydney began to rebuild, the bond between humans and Asliel grew stronger. The crisis had forged a deep connection, and both sides committed to a future of cooperation and mutual respect. One evening, Mitch and Saul stood on a hill overlooking the city, now bustling with life and renewal. The scars of the disaster were still visible, but so was the resilience and spirit of its people. "We have come a long way," Saul remarked, his voice contemplative. Mitch nodded, his gaze steady on the horizon. "And we have a long way to go. But together, we can face whatever comes next." Saul extended his hand, a rare gesture of camaraderie. "To a future built on trust and unity." Mitch shook his hand, a smile spreading across his face. "To a future we build together." As the sun set over New Sydney, casting a golden glow over the city, Mitch felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. And with allies like Saul and the Asliel, he knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had also been filled with growth, understanding, and hope. Mitch looked forward to the future, confident that humanity's resilience and the Asliel's wisdom would guide them to new heights. Together, they would continue to heal, rebuild, and thrive, forging a path toward a brighter tomorrow.